This small country shouldn't be this important. What if one of Europe's smallest countries had far more influence than its size suggests? Look at a map, and Belgium can seem easy to miss. Yet almost 12 million people live here. 3 official languages are spoken within its borders. Brussels sits at the heart of European politics, while NATO also calls the city home. But politics is only part of the story. Walk through Belgium and the scene changes quickly. Medieval streets, quiet canals, grand squares glowing after sunset, chocolate shops filled with the smell of cocoa and warm sugar. And then you hear it. The sharp hiss of batter touching a hot waffle iron. Steam rises. Sugar begins to caramelize. A golden waffle is lifted onto the counter. It looks familiar. But here is where things get interesting. The Belgian waffle, known around the world, is only part of the story. In Belgium, 2 famous waffles compete for attention, and the difference between them goes far beyond their shape. So how did this small country become so influential? And how did one simple waffle become famous across the world? To answer that, we have to start with Belgium itself. Belgium is tiny, but surprisingly crowded. Belgium may look small on the map, but once you step inside the country, that small size becomes one of its most interesting features. As of January 1, 2026, Belgium had 11,867,634 residents, 42,083 more people than a year earlier. That means nearly 12 million people live within this compact European nation. And that changes what everyday life here feels like. Brussels, Antwerp, Ghent, Bruges, and Liège each have their own character, yet they exist remarkably close to one another. Between the larger cities are smaller towns, villages, farmland, and historic communities. Belgium can shift from busy streets and crowded railway stations to quiet countryside in what feels like a very short journey. For someone living here, that closeness can be a major advantage. One day can begin among the glass office buildings and crowded streets of Brussels, continue through the medieval center of Ghent or Bruges, and end somewhere much quieter. But Belgium's population is changing as well. In 2026, 20.67% of Belgians are aged 65 or older, roughly 1 person in every 5. 30 years earlier, that figure was about 16%. Belgium is getting older, creating new questions about its workforce, communities, and future population. So this is the first contradiction that makes Belgium so fascinating. A small country, nearly 12 million people, historic towns beside modern cities, and an influence that stretches far beyond its borders. Yet fitting millions of people into a small space is only the beginning. Because those millions of Belgians don't all speak the same language. And that brings us to something even more unusual about this country. Belgium has 3 official languages. Cross a few regions in Belgium, and something starts to change. The buildings may still look familiar, the cafes are still busy, trains continue to move between cities, but the words around you begin to shift. In the north, across Flanders, Dutch dominates daily life. Travel south into Wallonia, and French becomes the main language. Then, near Belgium's eastern border, you enter a much smaller community where German is officially spoken. Dutch, French, German. All 3 are official languages of Belgium. And here is the part that surprises many first-time visitors. There is no language called Belgian. The country's identity has never been built around one single language. Instead, language is closely tied to where people live, how they are educated, what media they consume, and even how parts of the country are governed. Walk through an ordinary morning in Flanders, and you might hear Dutch outside a bakery as commuters collect coffee before work. Move into Wallonia, and French fills the markets, schools, and neighborhood cafes. Travel farther east, and German becomes part of everyday conversation. These differences are more than something tourists notice on road signs. They have helped shape Belgium itself. The country is organized around 3 language communities and 3 regions, with different levels of government responsible for different areas of public life. In other words, Belgium did not solve its differences by forcing everyone into one identity. It created a system where several identities could exist inside the same country. And that makes daily life here especially interesting. 2 Belgians can share the same nationality, live only a few hours apart, and grow up speaking different languages. Yet they still share the same country, the same flag, and many of the same traditions. So how does one relatively small nation hold together so many different identities? The answer becomes even more interesting when we reach the place where many of these worlds meet. Because nowhere do the different sides of Belgium come together more visibly than in one city, Brussels. Brussels is much more than Belgium's capital. Brussels may be Belgium's capital, but the decisions made here can reach far beyond the country's borders. Walk through the Grand Place, surrounded by ornate buildings and centuries of history, and Brussels can feel like a city preserved from another age. Travel only a short distance, and the atmosphere changes completely. Glass offices rise above the streets, diplomats arrive for meetings, journalists wait outside government buildings. The European Council, the Council of the European Union, and the European Commission are based in Brussels, placing the city at the center of major European decisions. Then there is NATO. Its headquarters in Brussels is the political and administrative center of the alliance and the permanent home of the North Atlantic Council. Around 6,000 meetings take place there every year. And in 2026, Belgium's federal government is led by Prime Minister Bart De Wever. So in one afternoon, you can walk past buildings that have stood for centuries, hear several languages in a crowded cafe, and pass institutions where decisions affecting Europe and global security are being discussed. That contrast is part of what makes Brussels remarkable. But Belgium's influence does not end in meeting rooms or government buildings. Listen closely. The cameras stop clicking. The city noise fades. Then comes the hiss of a hot waffle iron. Because Belgium has another kind of influence, one you can actually taste. Belgian waffles have centuries of history. Belgium's waffle story began long before today's busy cafes and tourist streets. Images of waffle-like foods appear in European history centuries ago, and written references to Brussels waffles can be traced to the 19th century. They were also connected with celebrations, including carnival traditions. But there is an important detail. The waffle tradition is centuries old, yet the waffles served in Belgium today developed gradually. Recipes changed, baking methods improved, different regions created their own styles. Imagine the scene generations ago. A heavy iron heated over fire, sweet dough pressed between its plates, warm butter melting into the mixture, and steam escaping as the surface slowly turned golden. That same basic experience still survives today. Walk past a Belgian waffle shop and you may smell caramelized sugar before you even see the counter. The iron opens, steam rises, another waffle is ready. Buildings can preserve history in stone. Food preserves it through taste, smell, habit, and memory. And Belgium's waffles have carried that tradition forward for generations. But this is where many visitors make their first mistake. There is no single Belgian waffle, and the difference between Belgium's two most famous versions is much bigger than it first appears. At first glance, they may look like two versions of the same dessert. They are not. Belgium's two best-known waffles are the Brussels waffle and the Liège waffle, and each has its own character. Place them side by side, and the difference is easy to see. On one side, the Brussels waffle is large, light, and usually rectangular, with deep square pockets. On the other, the Liège waffle is smaller, thicker, and more irregular in shape, with a heavier texture and a sweeter finish. But appearance is only the beginning. Their dough is different, their texture is different. Even the way the sweetness develops during cooking is different. So here is the question: which one do you think deserves the title of the famous Belgian waffle? Take a closer look before you decide. One became closely tied to the international image of Belgian waffles. The other hides its sweetness inside the dough itself. And once you know how each one is made, you may never look at a Belgian waffle the same way again. Let's start with the large rectangular one, the Brussels waffle. Now look closely at the Brussels waffle. It is usually large and rectangular, with deep square pockets across the surface. A typical one has around 20 to 24 pockets, giving it that familiar grid-like appearance. But its real appeal is in the texture. The batter hits the hot iron. Steam escapes. The surface turns golden, while the inside stays light and airy. Break through the edge, and you hear a gentle crunch. Inside, it is soft, warm, and much lighter than its size might suggest. And despite the heavily decorated versions often seen outside Belgium, a traditional Brussels waffle can be surprisingly simple. Sometimes, all it needs is a light dusting of powdered sugar. That simplicity lets the waffle itself stand out: the warm smell of butter, the crisp surface, and the soft center underneath. Imagine holding one while walking through Brussels, still warm from the iron as the sugar melts slightly on top. But here is the surprise. This may not be the waffle many Belgians reach for when they want something richer and sweeter on the street. For that, we have to meet its smaller, heavier cousin, the Liège waffle. Now meet the Liège waffle. It is smaller, thicker, and denser than the Brussels version. Its shape is less exact, and its edges are often rounded rather than perfectly rectangular. But the real difference is hidden inside the dough. Liège waffles are made with large sugar crystals, often called pearl sugar. As the waffle cooks, those crystals begin to melt and caramelize against the hot iron. That creates a sweeter flavor, a slightly crisp surface, and small pockets of caramelized sugar in every bite. So when you compare the two, the contrast becomes clear. The Brussels waffle is light and crisp. The Liège waffle is richer, denser, and more caramelized. A simple way to remember it is this: Brussels waffles often carry the sweetness on top. Liège waffles carry much of their sweetness inside. There is also a traditional story that the Liège waffle was created for a prince bishop by a cook experimenting with sweetened dough. It is a popular legend, but not a proven historical fact. And that leaves us with a bigger question. If Belgium has more than one famous waffle, why did people thousands of kilometers away begin calling them all simply Belgian waffles? The answer takes us to a moment that changed their international reputation. So how did the world end up with the name Belgian waffle? A major turning point came at the 1964 New York World's Fair. Maurice Vermeersch and his family served Brussels-style waffles, topped with whipped cream and strawberries. Crowds loved them, and demand quickly grew into the thousands. Belgian-style waffles had already appeared in America, including at the 1962 Seattle World's Fair, but New York pushed them into the spotlight. Then came the name. Instead of relying on Brussels waffle, a name many American visitors were less familiar with, the Vermeersch family promoted their creation as a Belgian-style Belgian waffle. That small naming decision helped create something much bigger. A regional Belgian specialty became an international food identity. And suddenly, people far beyond Belgium were asking for one thing: a Belgian waffle. But here is the irony. Back in Belgium, waffles never needed to become an elaborate luxury dessert. They were already part of everyday life. To understand Belgian waffle culture, look beyond the restaurant table. Look to the street. Fresh waffles are commonly sold from bakeries, cafes, and small kiosks, making them part of everyday life rather than something reserved only for tourists or special occasions. Picture a rainy afternoon in Brussels. Trams move past wet streets. Commuters hurry home. Students gather near shop windows. Then, through the noise of traffic and conversation, comes the smell of warm dough and caramelized sugar. Someone buys a waffle, folds it into paper, and keeps walking. That simple moment says a lot. Here, food can carry memory, routine, and family tradition. Recipes are often passed down, and familiar flavors become tied to childhood, neighborhoods, and home. And that reveals something bigger. The waffle is not famous because Belgium built its identity around one dessert. It matters because it belongs to a much richer food culture. As evening settles over Brussels, the streets begin to glow. A warm waffle in hand, lights reflecting across the cobblestones, the noise of the day slowly fading. And after everything we've seen, Belgium no longer feels like a small country on a map. It is a place of nearly 12 million people, 3 official languages, historic cities, major international institutions, and food traditions that have traveled far beyond its borders. Even the waffle tells a bigger story. One country, 2 famous styles, centuries of tradition, and a journey that helped turn a local favorite into something recognized around the world. So now, I want to hear from you. Brussels waffle or Liège waffle? Which one are you choosing? And if you had one day in Belgium, would you spend it in Brussels, Bruges, Antwerp, or Liège? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe for more 4K journeys through fascinating places around the world, and share this video with someone who still thinks every Belgian waffle is the same. Because Belgium may be small, but its story is anything but. Belgium, small country, big story.